New scenarios about Russian-Ukrainian war from White House. How and when will Donald Trump punish Russian dictator Putin, and what problems are destroying the Russian Federation right now? We will discuss in our program. My name is Iryna Uzlova, and today with us is Jason J. Smart, political commentator and PhD in political science. Jason, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us again.
Nice to see you as well.
U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg expressed hope that next year Ukraine would be able to celebrate Independence Day under a peaceful sky. According to his remarks at the prayer breakfast in Kiev, he has his visit in Ukrainian in Kiev, and Kellogg hopes Ukraine will celebrate peace next year. Says war is easier than path to peace, and we see it too. Earlier, J.D. Vance hopes Russia's war against Ukraine can be ended within 6 months. He said that he hopes about it in an interview with NBC. Jason, how do you think, what gives Keith Kellogg and J.D. Vance such confidence?
I don't think they have any confidence. I think they're just stating general hope. I don't think there's any reason to believe that there's something clear.
Our previous interview, you told me that Trump's administration has no plan in detail. And this Monday, we still see the same situation, only hopes without direct steps?
Pretty much. I mean, I think that everybody that says that Donald Trump is going to do something should just cite some tangible evidence. Well, I mean, what clearly do you see? I don't see any evidence for this. So if we're just going to say that we hope things, well, I also hope it. What difference does that make? It's absolutely meaningless. I see absolutely no evidence whatsoever to support the argument that there's a plan underway.
But J.D. Vance characteristic Trump's diplomacy and foreign policy like very energetic and very dynamic situation. Can we agree with it?
I don't see any evidence to that.
Yes, we too. But J.D. Vance, as we know. So, how do you think? What are the main goals of Keith Kellogg's visit to Ukraine, to Ukrainian capital?
I think it was just to be here for the holiday, the Independence Day, and to receive the state award. But I don't think that there was any actual plan. I don't see any evidence that anything was realized. Keep in mind, Kellogg himself is not directly part of the negotiations. He doesn't go to Moscow. As far as I can tell, he's not being brought into most of the meetings that are occurring. So they sent somebody who has actual very little ability to affect change.
But maybe it's like support signal or signal to the Kremlin, or no?
No, I don't think so. Keep in mind, when the Kremlin said they didn't want Kellogg to be part of the negotiating team with Russia, the White House agreed and removed him. So his value is, I would guess, very, very little. I mean, once again, he seems like a very nice man, but I don't think he has actual influence over what happens.
But maybe Keith Kellogg can discuss future security guarantees with Ukrainian authority.
No, he won't. That's not his job.
It's not his sphere, yes, and job.
No, it's not his sphere, not his job. It does not involve him.
But sometimes we like such visits because these days Putin don't strike Ukrainian territory very strong. Maybe is Putin afraid of such visits, or it's only another signal?
Well, there's a lot of foreign leaders in Kiev for the past few days, and as a result, I assume that the Russian authorities would be afraid of accidentally attacking somewhere in Kiev, for instance, and killing a foreign leader, which can happen very easily. They don't have to actually target them. Air defense can try to shoot down a missile, and that missile could end up landing on a different building. So that's sort of a high risk. I think Russia is probably cautious of that sort of a risk because that would have a dramatic results. That's why I don't think that it's necessarily more than that. I think it's just being cautious to make sure they don't accidentally kill a European leader.
Mm-hmm. But we see while these visits last, Putin attacked Sumy region in full way.
Well, Sumy is not very close to Kiev. I mean, relatively, it's I guess 5 hours in a car. But the probability that would somehow hurt a foreigner is very, very low.
You are quite right that we see a lot of visits these days, Independent Day, and starting from this Monday. Today, for example, Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr arrived in Kiev. He met with Zelensky, also with our Ministry for Foreign Affairs, with Chief of President's Office. Also, German Vice Chancellor arrives in Kiev and ensures support for Ukraine. Lars Klingbeil said that Germany is looking for ways to join the peace process in Ukraine. And Financial Times writes that Europe sells its soul to Trump. And this is a big mistake that undermines its authority. But our previous interview, we discussed that Europe show united position and a stronger position talking to Trump last Monday. So maybe Financial Times writes in a wrong way or no? Why? What can they mean under that phrase that Europe sells its soul to Trump?
I think the Europeans, if they really wanted to take leadership in this issue, they could in regards to Ukraine. And it's very easy to do. The fact is the United States is not contributing financially anymore. It's not contributing weapons anymore. It's allowing Europeans to buy weapons, but it's themselves not giving anything. And that's why I really don't understand why Donald Trump is the center of this. He said very clearly this was a European problem, so he should be told to leave. It's fine. Then the Europeans will take responsibility for it, and we don't need your help. Please just step away. But the Europeans don't do that. They are choosing to allow him to manage this process. And that is a choice. I mean, it is an actual choice. There is no reason for the Americans to be involved in this. If they are not contributing weapons, they are not contributing manpower, they're trying to actively be disengaged, then why are the Americans still managing this negotiations? The Russians didn't ask them to do it. The Ukrainians didn't ask them to do it. The Europeans didn't ask them to do it. Why are the Europeans allowing this then? And the answer is very simple, is no one in Europe wants to tell the Americans, listen, we can do it probably better than you can. Or we'd be better off if we just negotiate this ourselves. Well, thank you for the help. But they don't do that. And that's simply because I think they put their own interest first. And then when I say their own interest, that means that they are more worried about what this will do for the future bilateral relations with the U.S. And so Ukraine is being degraded as a priority.
Will Trump sell weapons anyway to Europe and to us?
No, I think that definitely Donald Trump will sell weapons. There's nothing to lose. It doesn't actually mean he supports anything. He's just selling something, which isn't really even him selling it. He's allowing the U.S. corporations to sell this, and in which case I think there's no problem with that. Well, I can't imagine why he'd oppose that. But we see that now the U.S. is trying to limit how Ukraine can use weapons inside of Russia. All this would be avoidable if the U.S. were to just be pushed out of the negotiating process.
Zelensky says Russia's readiness not to seize more of Ukraine is not concessions. It's true. The promises of the Russian authorities to end the occupation of Ukraine in exchange for the surrender of the Donetsk and Lugansk regions are not concessions, stated Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky ahead of a meeting with German Vice Chancellor and Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil, according to our media, to Interfax Ukraine. And Zelensky added that now Moscow and Washington should decide about future meeting with Zelensky and Putin. And Zelensky pointed out that a meeting at the leadership level now depends solely on Moscow and Washington. But how exactly can Washington influence Moscow right now to make its meeting closer?
It's a good question. I'm not quite sure what they would do. I'm sure that the talks that are ongoing right now, there's different aspects of it. One aspect of it is going to be simply whether or not Washington can offer enough of an incentive for Moscow to agree. Unfortunately, it seems that the White House is very anxious to give as many incentives as possible to the Russians. That we've seen that they're still not imposing the sanctions that were supposed to be implemented already weeks ago. It's very clear, though, that Washington is not executing a strategy. There is no clear plan here, as far as I can tell. And if anyone who says there is a clear plan, what is it? I mean, the fact is, this has been already more than half a year since Trump became president. He said he'd end the war in one day. What clear steps have you seen? Other than meetings, okay, meetings are what bureaucrats do. What did it achieve? What clear steps, what clear successes have you seen? Talking is not success. It's talking. It's a failure. Inherently, I think that there is no plan from the White House and that the Russians are playing with them, and they think that the White House is too foolish to realize it. And which is, to be fair, probably accurate, because when you look at who they have managing things, Witkoff, a guy who has no idea how international relations works, he was, I think it was already 2 or 3 times before, he went to the Kremlin, he met with Putin, he met with senior Russian officials, and he chose not to contact the National Security Council before he went to those meetings. He doesn't give readouts to other parts of the government. These are just the emissaries of Trump who have no background in what they're doing. He sells real estate. In charge of all these very important things. And unfortunately, I don't see any signs to believe that there is some sort of a clear path forward. I think that the Russians realize they have a very advantageous situation. They're dealing with people who are amateurs and are not professionals in this field.
But one of the Trump's best media, New York Post, he reads it regularly, reported that Putin will pay a high price for trolling Trump. The Kremlin issues ultimatums instead of negotiations, forcing Washington to prepare a tough response. When will we see this response?
We won't.
At all, yes. But New York Post think in another way.
Well, they can hope, as J.D. Vance hopes. We all hope, and does it matter at all? It's meaningless.
But J.D. Vance noticed that sometimes Trump is frustrated about Putin and he is even angry.
J.D. Vance wants to become the next president. He has an agenda. Don't read into it literally.
Yes, sure, clear here. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov confirmed our previous comments with you that Putin will never meet with Zelensky. He said on NBC Meet the Press program that no meeting is planned between Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. According to him, such a meeting is possible only after a preliminary agreement that would correspond to the Kremlin's agenda. This agenda includes a number of demands: Ukraine's refusal to join NATO, repeal of laws protecting the Ukrainian language, preliminary agreement on territorial issues that Moscow doesn't specify, and also secular. So I have some questions about this case. How is it possible that such an authoritative media outlet interviews with a representative of the aggressor country? Why? For what?
We as journalists always look for things that will get lots of clicks, and it's irresponsible, but that's what I expect from journalists.
But is it normal to American people, to American viewers, to see and hear such awful statements from Lavrov?
I think it's actually useful. I don't think it's a negative. I think it's a positive, because it shows that the Russian side is not interested in peace. It makes it very clear. You had the foreign minister very clearly say that their objectives have not changed. They're not interested in negotiating de facto. I think it's actually a positive thing. I'm happy he was interviewed by the U.S. press, because you see that this is not the Ukrainian side that doesn't want peace. It's the Russian side who very obviously is totally disinterested in peace. The Russian side has made no changes whatsoever in the course of already 7 months of dealing with the U.S. president. So what does that say? It says that the U.S. has had no successes whatsoever in 7 months. So whatever J.D. Vance says or anyone else, it's total nonsense. It's just fiction. And so we have to be clear. I think it's very good that Lavrov was on American TV, because everybody could see for themselves that it's just lies. It's all lies. This is not interpretation. This is not the Ukrainian media bias. This is Lavrov on American TV very clearly stating exactly what Putin has stated many times, which is that Russia's position has not changed. And that the Russian position is that the Americans are so weak that they'll accept it. But I think it's actually okay that the Americans see this.
So Lavrov looks worse in the eyes of the American viewer after such interviews, Lavrov and Russian Federation in general.
I think so, yes. Because if somebody understands the issues well enough, which I think is always going to be a minority of citizens in the U.S. who understand well enough what the terms and conditions that we're discussing about the peace settlement are. But either way, it's not bad to have somebody on like Lavrov who so very clearly is just repeating what he's told to repeat. And Sergei Lavrov is not an important figure in Russia, as you well enough know. He's not in the inner circle of Putin. He didn't know about the full-scale invasion until, 2 or 3 hours before it began. He's not a significant figure. He's simply a mouthpiece. His only job is to read what they tell him. I don't think he thinks of anything. I've never heard at least a story even of him planning foreign policy for Russia. He's not involved in these decisions. He just repeats what the Kremlin tells him to repeat. And that's a good thing because it's irrational and it's stupid. And anyone that listens to him realizes this is irrational and stupid. And very fortunately, he's the foreign minister of Russia, so everybody can realize the Russian foreign minister is irrational and stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, and everybody in the whole world can see it again. How actively are Americans discussing Trump's attempts to end the Russian-Ukrainian war these days?
It's quite a bit in the news, to be fair. That is in the news a lot, but it's been in the news a lot for the whole time. It's surprising, I think, to most people how badly it's gone. It's only in Washington. It's only the White House that thinks that things are going really well. And I think that just shows that the Russians have known exactly what to say and how to make them happy, how to make them think that there's going to be a real chance at peace. Because it's very abundantly clear there's no movement. There's nothing going on. There's absolutely nothing. It's just empty words. The Russians are getting from the Americans exactly what they want. We see that the Russian side continues to demand all these different things, these 9 different things, and I have not heard anything yet from Washington that they refuse to accept them. And J.D. Vance, even 6 months ago, said that it was, in fact, the Russians who were being unfair. They're unwilling to make concessions. Okay, it's been 6 months. Have you seen J.D. Vance do anything about it? No, there's nothing.
Yeah, yes. Russian Federation has a lot of problems nowadays. Among of them, it's that fact that first Russian region to completely stop selling gas or line due to the growing fuel crisis that began after a series of strikes by Ukrainian drones on Russian oil refineries. Writes the Moscow Times about it. So such situation, they show weakness of Russian Federation too to the whole world and how Ukraine can strike effectively and show our power.
It's very important that the world sees that. I agree with you totally. I think you're absolutely right. The fact is, unfortunately, I don't think it's shown nearly enough. Everybody thinks that Russia is winning, which is just insane. By no metric are they winning. I mean, they've taken less than 3% of Ukrainian territory in the course of 3.5 years and had over a million, something hundreds of thousands of casualties in this period of time. This is not success. This is a failure, a total failure. And so when Ukraine is able to attack successfully within Russia, the oil refineries are a good example. We see that they were able to successfully reduce the amount of production by 13, perhaps up to 20%, which is huge. Parts of Russia now, like the Kuril Islands, no longer have gasoline for sale for private citizens. Overall, this is good. And unfortunately, I think that currently Ukraine is being forced by the United States to probably do less attacks with American weapons. But Ukraine should, in fact, do much more. And that's why I really do hope the Americans get excluded from the negotiating process. If the Americans get pushed out of this, it's the best thing that could probably happen to Ukraine and to Europe. For everybody involved, this is the best thing that could happen. The only one that benefits from the United States being involved is Russia. It doesn't benefit anyone else. Absolutely no one else is benefiting from this. Because if Ukraine were to just strike, let's imagine, there's 7, 8 ports in all of Russia that export oil. Let's imagine you just destroyed the ports. It's not that hard to do. It's physically feasible. And then you think about the warm water ports, soon it's going to be winter, just attack those. It's only a couple of them. If you destroy those successfully, that destroys the Russian national economy. There is no more national economy in Russia. That's 40%, 45% of their national budget. Ukraine physically could do this if it wanted to. That would very quickly change how this war turns out.
Sometimes I think, are Russians really happy about such events, about Putin's war against us that make their lives worse and worse from day to day?
I don't think they are. I mean, I think the average person in Russia is probably indifferent to it. They don't think about it very often. They probably don't have a very positive feeling of it, especially those who are the younger generations. The older ones who just watch state propaganda all day in television, they probably think that the special military operation is somehow beneficial to Russia. But I think that the average person in Russia is mostly indifferent, which is normal in all countries. It's typically that way. It's not unusual. But the other thing is that it's, I think for the average Russian who is watching the situation, they realize it's bad, especially those who have education, those who live in Moscow, those who live in St. Petersburg. They realize this has not helped their country at all. And so overall, I think going ahead, what's important is that the average Russian feels that the war is getting closer to them. And that's why, once again, a great idea, very easy to do, is have Ukrainian drones fly over Moscow airports 24 hours a day for the next 4 weeks. If no airplanes can come in, no airplanes can go out, the Russian economy again collapses. And the Russian population as a whole sees that there is no longer the ability of the government to control the airspace. But that's why, more than ever, I really would hope that Ukraine is able to do more attacks within Russia. That's probably the most effective way to change the outcomes of negotiations.
Jason, thank you. Thank you for your position, for your time, and for our today conversation. See you next week. Take care, please.
Thank you.
Jason J. Smart, political commentator and PhD in political science. My name is Iryna Uzlova. Guys, thank you for joining and watching us. Leave your comments, please, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, War and Politics 24. See you next week. Take care.